Welcome to Rebel Chaser. My name is Gail, and I have a video for you from a new judge for my channel. Her name is Judge Sala. I'm sure you guys have seen her. And this is a brother and sister. Sister used to take care of mom until mom ended up weighing 80 pounds. The brother then stepped in. Now the sister is nitpicking over every single penny. I sped up the dollars and cents part because it was very long. So I just kind of sped it up to get it to go a little faster, but I'll let you guys watch.
File, resolve number of outstanding issues this afternoon. My ways of entry hearing. May I have the names of our participants, please? All right, we are back on record in this file. Resolve number of outstanding issues this afternoon. My ways of evidentiary hearing. May I have the names of our participants, please?
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Stepping on behalf of Sam Xavier, who's an interested party and filed objection to the first annual account of this matter.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Ariel Berger here, the guardian ad litem.
Chairman of the prosecutor, and Xavier. I did file substitution of counsel for this will help.
Thank you.
Sally Xavier, interested party.
Thank you.
Kimberly Parks, attorney on behalf of the petitioner and conservator, Sam Xavier, who is also present.
Sam Xavier, legal guardian and conservator.
Thank you. You have Sam under your video there. Is that what you prefer to go by?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Ms. Parks, you sound a bit under the weather. You all right today?
I believe it or not, this sounds significantly better than it did last week.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so we're powering through.
Okay, well, if it gets to be too much, let us know. We'll try to find some time. It's supposed to be an evidentiary hearing on the objections to the accounting today. Is that what you understand is today?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So if we talk you out, just let us know.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Baker, would you like to proceed?
Judge, I would, if I could call my client, Sally Xavier, to stand.
Yes, Xavier, I'm going to stand. Did you have any opening remarks you wish to make?
I do not, Judge. I filed a supplemental objection that set forth kind of what our issues are, a broad brushstroke of what our issues were. I know Ms. Parks was kind enough to provide a response to that. So at this point, Judge, I think it's best we just move forward and let my client address her issues to the court. Let the chips fall where they may.
All right, Ms. Parks, did you wish to make any opening comments?
No, Your Honor, as stated previously, we believe that Ms. Xavier's objections are unfounded, but I understand that she would like to provide testimony to that effect. And we're just going to ask the court to approve the accounting as submitted.
All right, to our last two attorneys in the courtroom, any opening comments? No, Your Honor.
No, you're right. Thank you.
Okay, thank
Please
you.
raise your right hand. You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
To the step here, be sure.
All right, you are. Proceed at will.
Ma'am, would you please state your name, spell your last name for the record?
Sally Xavier, Xavier.
And Sally, you are the daughter of Ann Xavier, is that correct?
Correct.
And in fact, you were the conservator and guardian prior to.
I wasn't the actual conservator and guardian. I was a caregiver.
Okay. You took care of your mother's finances as well as her. She's currently in an assisted living facility. Is that true?
Yes, I took care of the finances, but I didn't.
And Sally, the current conservator and guardian is one of your brothers. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you have an additional brother. Is that also correct?
Correct.
What is his name?
Sunil Xavier.
Okay. To the best of your knowledge, Sunil's not present in the courtroom today. Is that true?
Correct.
Okay. And obviously, you've been introduced to everyone on Zoom. You don't see him on Zoom either. Is that correct?
No.
Okay. Sunil lives out of state. Is that correct?
Yes, in Virginia.
Now, Sally, you filed or you directed an objection to the petition to allow the first annual account in this matter. Is that true?
Correct.
Okay. And I guess let me back up for just a second. What is your background?
I'm a CPA and also I have my MBA and I have several years of professional experience in the accounting, auditing and financial services area.
You're currently retired though.
Retired. Yes.
All right. So Sally, the original petition was filed. You caused certain objections. Specifically centered around the fact that you did not receive any supporting documentation reflecting the expenses that were set forth on that accounting. Is that true?
That's true.
Okay. And ultimately, we did in fact receive the supporting documentation or what purported to be the supporting documentation. Is that also true?
Yes, what's purported to be.
Okay, and you had a chance to go through that documentation, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you went through it with a fine tooth comb under the scope of a CPA, is that true?
That's true.
Okay, and our office provided you with that documentation, correct?
Correct.
All right, and after reviewing that, you still had certain concerns based on your review of the data that was provided, is that correct?
That's correct.
And accordingly, you gave our office a long list of issues that you found as it pertained to the documentation, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and as a result of the myriad of, or the list of issues that you provided, we, on your behalf, filed a supplemental information to our original objection, is that correct?
Correct.
You reviewed that document before we filed it?
Yes.
Okay, now, we can both agree, Sally, or can we both agree that every single one of the objections you raised is not addressed in that supplemental objection?
Yes, we agree.
Okay, in fact, isn't it true that we agreed that we were going to synthesize those and bring them down to a manageable number so that we could deal with them in this objection?
Well, that was your recommendation. I didn't necessarily agree with it, but.
Okay, well, you're here today, Sally, so if you'd like, and the reason we're here today is you can tell the court and everyone in the present of this hearing all the objections you have to the accounting based on the documentation that's provided.
Okay,
Fair enough?
fair.
Okay, I'm gonna start with the resolved issues.
Mhm.
And we set these, and I'm sorry, Sally, you just said,
Yeah.
You need to remember one important thing about this hearing, everything's being recorded. So it's really important that we say yes, no, verbalize our, don't just nod your heads, but verbalize it. Understood?
Understood.
Okay, and I am terrible at this, but we'll try our best not to talk over each other. Okay? All right. So Sally, we do have certain resolved issues, and after reviewing the documentation that was provided by Ms. Parks, we agree and no longer have an objection to the legal fees that were set forth in the original proposed account. Is that correct?
That is correct, but then I had the other 520 of fees that were incurred after the end of the accounting period of 5/3/23, and that needed to not be included since it was out of the accounting period.
Okay, so you believe, and I'm sure Ms. Parks would be willing to go back and look at her billings, that if there were any fees that were included in the first accounting, but actually occurred even a day after that accounting period ended, they should be in fact be included in the second accounting. Is that correct?
Correct.
And what did you say that number was?
$520.
Okay. All right, let's talk about what we don't agree about, or what you don't agree about, the unresolved matters. First of all, with regards to Social Security income, what specifically are your issues with the Social Security income that was reflected in the accounting as well as the documentation that was provided by Ms. Parks on behalf of her client, the Conservator?
That there was no supporting documentation for the Social Security income from May 3rd to May 3rd, 2022 to May 3rd, 2023.
Okay, and
And I don't see any evidence of deposits in the bank accounts.
when you say supporting documentation, first of all, what specifically are you looking for?
Like a Social Security statement that they normally send out yearly.
And you say your review reflects that they have never been deposited during that time period?
I
in
don't
bank
see
accounts?
any evidence that they were deposited in the bank accounts.
Now, if Ms. Parks were to provide that documentation, and as I mentioned to you, and had given you an opportunity to review, she has in fact responded to, I believe, all of our objections as far as where she believes that evidence is located. If in fact that evidence is located, you would no longer have an objection to that issue, is that correct?
Yes, as long as it's written evidence.
And when I say the evidence, I'm talking about proof that that Social Security deposit was in fact placed into
Yes,
one of the bank accounts on behalf of your mother.
yes.
Okay. Let's go to Medicare Blue plus the PPO. What is your issue with that?
Okay, that there were the missing invoices for payments, May, June, December of 2022, and January and March of 2023.
Okay, when you say missing invoices, do you dispute that they did in fact bill your mother's account for those items?
I believe that they did send the bills, but they weren't included in the documentation.
Well, I guess what we're trying to flesh out here, Sally, we're trying to drill down on what exactly the objection is, so that's why I'm persisting. If you believe they were sending the bills, and we just didn't get a copy of the bills, you did see the payments, is that correct?
I saw some, but for the ones I mentioned, I didn't see those.
So you didn't, not only did you not see invoices, but you also don't reflect payments coming out.
For the missing
Okay,
ones, yes.
fair enough. Let's talk about the City National Bank.
Okay,
What was your primary objection with regards to that account?
okay, the ones that I originally said that were, do you want me to cover the ones in our supplemental or? just-
I want you to cover all your
All of
objections. This is your chance to tell the
Okay,
court what your
sure.
issues are, Sally.
Sure. So then on that, the City National Bank, there were no bank statements for, well, wouldn't have been City National Bank, but it would have been her previous bank accounts in Adrian. No bank statements for April, 2022 and May 1 through 25th of 2022. And those should have been included because those are covered by the accounting period.
Okay, let's talk about that for a minute.
Okay.
Your objection is that there were no bank statements for April of 2022. Let's start with that one.
Okay,
Okay. Would you agree with me that the order appointing your brother as a conservator was signed on May 4th, 2022, non pro tunc May 3rd, which means it was kind of retroactively applied to May 3rd of 2022. Do you agree with
for
that?
the permanent appointment.
Okay. So to flesh this out, your objection is that there was no accounting or documentation provided while he was the temporary conservator and guardian. Is that
Correct.
correct? And that would be inclusive of that May of 2022 date.
And the April.
And you also indicated in here, or we indicated based on your input, that you also didn't have a bank statement for the month of May of 2022. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Did you have other issues with that account?
Yeah, there was, questionable deposits where only a part of a $46,055.92 TLC cashier's check was deposited for the total amount of check of $46,900. That was issued on May 4th, 2022, leaving a balance of $844.08 unaccounted for.
All right, let's stop right there. What was that $46,055.92 cashier's check from TLC Bank? What did that represent? To the best of your
Okay,
knowledge?
that represented the amount of, that I had in my possession, because it was a joint account of $46,900 that I had returned to the conservator that on May the 4th.
Okay, so you turned over a check for $46,900 to your brother after he'd been appointed as the conservator. Is that true?
It was actually FedExed to him, yes.
And your objection is only $46,055.92 of that was deposited. Is that true?
Correct,
Okay. So your question is what happened to the other $844.08?
correct.
You also indicated that there were, you called it, or you phrased it, we phrased it as no supporting documentation for a series of deposits. Is that true?
That's true.
What supporting documentation would you expect to find based on the experience you've had in the accounting world?
Like what the source of the money came from, like a check with a description to show what that was, where that came from and what the total amount of it was versus the net amount that was deposited.
So to be clear, your objection is not that your brother deposited monies into your mom's account for her benefit. Your objection is based on the fact that you can't verify that he deposited the entire amount of those monies because you don't, A, know where they came from, what they were for, B, and C, how much they were for. Is that true?
That's true.
Other than the ones that we listed on in subparagraph C3,
Yes,
are there other unresolved checks or other checks that
yes.
you feel are lacking documentation?
yes, there was no supporting documentation for check number 121, paid on January 1st, 2023, for $552.67.
Okay, let me interrupt your.
Okay.
You're talking about checks that were paid. I'm talking about deposits.
Oh, okay.
So are there any other objections you have to
On
deposits that you did not have documentation to reflect where they came from, what they were for, and what the amount was?
Yes, there's no supporting documentation for a $48,499 deposit on May 26th of 2022.
Do you have any idea what that was for?
No,
Are there any other deposits
Yeah.
that you have objections to?
the ones that are listed under item C3, A through L.
Right, we went through well, we didn't go through every one, but I'm saying other than those that you have listed, I'm trying to
Right.
kind of drill this down a little bit for the court's benefit and all the attorney's benefit.
No, not other than the one I just said,
Okay.
for the 48,499.
How about the deposit? You said that there was a deposit for $75.87 for an insurance refund issued on June 30th, 2022. Is it your objection that that deposit was never made into your mother's account?
Yes, because there's no indication that it was deposited into the account.
Okay, do you have indication that it was refunded?
I believe, yes, there was indication of that.
All right, let's talk about checks now.
Okay, I have another second
Okay,
deposit.
Okay.
no documentation for a second deposit of August of 2022, which was related to TIAA. So there's no records of of second deposit in August of 2022 and of 2 deposits for the months of October 2022 and April 2023.
All right, now let me ask you this, Sally, this TIAA, correct, that's TIAA correct, is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so your mother was getting deposits twice a month from them?
One from TIAA CREF and one from Social Security. So,
Okay. So to be clear, when you say there's no record of any deposits of these 2 items for the month of October and April, October 2022 and April 2023, are you talking about TIAA CREF or are you talking about Social Security?
I'm talking of one of TIAA CREF and one of Social Security for each month.
Okay, so TIAA CREF only deposit once a month.
Correct,
Social Security deposit once a month.
correct.
Okay. Are there any other deposits that you feel are either lacking documentation or were not made that should have been made?
No, there aren't.
Okay, let's talk about checks now. These are payments out. In paragraph C4, we indicated that there was no description of supporting documentation for checks 116, 118, 119, 120, 123, all of which were paid in December of 2021 or 2022, excuse me. Have you had an opportunity to review the documentation that was provided to you?
Yes,
And did you find any supporting documents as to what those checks were for or how they were benefiting your mother?
no,
Are there any other checks that you did not find supporting documentation for?
yes, no supporting documentation for check number 121 paid January 5th, 2023 for $552.67.
Any other?
No, other checks.
Okay, well, actually, if you look at paragraph C7, we indicated that there's no supporting documentation for check number 103 for $4,450 paid on August 1st, et cetera. Do you see that?
Yeah, I see that.
Okay, do you still believe that that the record lacks support for those checks?
Yes, that's correct. I just missed that. That's no supporting documentation for check 103 for $4,450 paid on August 1st, 2022, and check 107 paid on August 30th, 2022 for $6,894.25, and check number 130 paid on April 27th, 2023 for $53.20.
Okay. Finally, with regards to that bank account, you indicate that there's no supporting documentation reflecting the increase in the monthly charge by the location where your mother's currently staying that began in January of 2023. Is that a true statement?
Yes,
Okay, what kind of documentation would you have expected to see?
like an invoice showing the monthly bill.
Okay, when you were managing your mother's finances prior to your brother taking over, did you receive monthly invoices from Charlotte Stevenson?
She wasn't in Charlotte Stevenson when I was taking care
Where
of
was
it.
she located? At home?
At home.
Do you know, based on your own knowledge, do you know whether Charlotte Stevenson in fact issues a monthly invoice?
Yes, because there were some included in the documentation.
But none that reflected the increase in the monthly charge.
Correct.
You're aware, ma'am, that in fact, I was just informed prior to today's hearing from the guardian ad litem appointed to assist your mother that there likely going to be an additional increase into her stay at Charlotte Stevenson.
That's the first I heard of it.
Okay. In other words, what I'm trying to get at is this: it's not uncommon every year for these locations to adjust, always in an upward, never downward, the amount they charge people to stay there.
That's true, but they also indicated on the invoice.
With regards to that bank account or the bank accounts, do you have any other objections that you've not told the court about today?
Yes, there's like other conservative expenses.
We haven't gotten to
Okay.
I'm just talking about the bank
Bank
account.
accounts?
You got any other objections, deposits, checks, lack of documentation relative to events occurring within those bank accounts that you would like the court to be aware of?
No, I don't.
Okay, let's move to conservator expenses. And we try to break these down, and I'd ask you to try to address these in a broken down manner as well. The first category that you took issue with was some of the airline expenses or the cost of travel expenses for your brother to come up here and perform his duties, presumably as a conservator or guardian. Is that true?
That's true.
Okay. And specifically, what were your concerns?
Okay, first of all, some of them I felt were unreasonable and excessive for each flight.
Okay, let me ask you this. I'm gonna stop you there. What you say you felt that they were unreasonable and excessive. What did you base that feeling?
Okay, I based on some of them were before he became appointed temporary conservator before April 7th. That was one reason. And another, it looked like the charges were excessively high from what I know the fares to be. For example, the December charge of $597.18 for a round trip flight. And just like the excess baggage charge should not have been borne by the state because they knew about the weight limits ahead of time. And then like, those were the main reasons. And there was also no supporting detailed ticket invoices.
So we referenced an April 25th, 2022 Delta single round trip for the amount of $248.
Right.
You believe that should not be paid by the estate because your brother was not appointed guardian at that time, is that true?
No, he was appointed guardian at that time. That one, the only ones I object to for being, before he was appointed were before April 7th.
Okay.
So that one is not for that reason, but it was for, I felt it was higher than what I know what the fares are.
Are there any additional costs of travel expenses? I'm not talking about hotels, cars, or anything else, just airline tickets.
No.
Are there any other travel expenses that you have objections to that are not referenced in the document provided to the court?
As far as airfare, there are not.
Okay, let's talk about hotels. We have listed a series of expenses that were presumably for hotels, although there's one that's in question, that you take issue with. Is that true?
That's true.
Okay, let's start with Comfort Inn. What is your issue with that charge that occurred on or about December 1st of 2022?
Okay, for that one, the total was $486.25 for a 3-night hotel stay at Comfort Inn in Adrian, and I think that is excessive for the amount they charge for a room rate.
Do you know what they charge for a room rate?
Not right offhand, but I know that's usually not more than $100 a night.
Comfort Inn on April 2nd, 2022.
Okay, that one I objected because the amount was high and also that it was before he was appointed as temporary conservator. And also another reason is the state was also being charged for 2 separate hotels in 2 different locations for the same night.
And that second location being the Wyndham Hotel in Sylvania.
Yes, the Wyndham Hotel in Sylvania. Yeah.
So let's look at that a minute. Sally, would you agree with me based on just life experiences that hotels are probably more expensive in Toledo, Sylvania area than they would be in Adrian?
Yes.
Okay. And on that one, it indicates that there was a charge of $159.12 for a 1-night stay. Is that true?
Correct.
So when you look at that number, is that number partially what you base your belief that the fees charged for the Adrian hotels on these other dates were somewhat elevated or unreasonable?
No, that's not true, because I've stayed in some of the Adrian hotels that are listed here, and I know what the daily, nightly rates are.
Okay, fair enough. Now, there's an Expedia charge for $225.84 on April 5th of 2022. Is that true?
That's true.
Okay. Do you have any reason to dispute the claim that that may have actually been used for a rental car and not for a hotel expense?
I have no reason to dispute that.
Okay. And if in fact that was used for a rental car, would you agree that that's probably not an unreasonable rate for a rental car?
It's not unreasonable, but it was also incurred before he became the conservator.
Okay, fair enough. Any other hotel expenses that you take objection with?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell the court about those, please?
Oh, okay, yeah, so Carlton Lodge, there were some things, additional things, like, it was like a charge for $3.70. I know it's not a high amount, but we don't have no indication what that was for. Comfort Inn, okay, we just talked about Comfort Inn and the Wyndham, so, okay, never mind. Okay, April 10th, there was Comfort Inn and for $133.07, and also $351.85 for a 4-night stay from April 5th through 9th of 2022. So like the first 2 nights would have been in the amount of $242.46 were incurred April 5th and 6th, which was before he was appointed temporary conservator. So that those would need to be reversed to the estate.
Okay. Any other hotel expenses you take issue with?
Yes.
Okay.
The April 2nd, 2022 Carlton Lodge for $122.09, and April 1st, 2022 Carlton Lodge for $100, and April 1st, 2022 Super 8 for $113.41 were all incurred before Sunbuck was appointed temporary conservator on April 7th, 2022, and needs to be reimbursed to the Sam Xavier's estate.
Isn't it also true, man, that the last two you just told us about, the Carlton Lodge and the Super 8, you said those were incurred on April 2nd and April 1st?
Well, the night of April 1st.
Okay, well, I'm looking at Comfort Inn was on April 2nd. Wyndham Hotel was on April 2nd. So isn't it true that we've got basically 3 or 4 hotels within a 2-day
Yes.
period that
Yes,
you're being billed for,
right.
that the estate is being billed for?
Yes, the first and the 2nd
Okay.
of April.
Does that conclude the issues you have with the hotel expenses?
Yes, it does.
Okay, rental cars. Do you have issues with the rental cars outside of what we've addressed in our objection? And I'll let you talk about those as well.
Yes, the one, budget for April 5th, 2022 for $176.06, and budget April 3rd, 2022 for $476.59 were, car rental expenses incurred before Sunbuck was appointed temporary conservator on
Okay.
4/7/2022 and need to be reimbursed to the estate.
And then we addressed the December 22nd, 2022, the May 6th, 2022, and the August 18th, 2022 in our objection. And you're of the opinion that all 3 of those were excessive in the amount charged.
Yes,
Let me ask you this, Sally, when you reviewed all the documentation that was provided by the conservator in support of this application to approve this accounting, did you review or did you see any invoices from these rental car companies for these vehicles that documented what their daily rate was?
no, I did not.
Okay. Have you, if you had a chance to review that type of information, that may or may not satisfy your concerns, is that true?
Yes.
Other than what we've discussed with regards to rental car expenses, do you have any additional objections you'd like the court to hear about as it pertains to rental car expenses?
No, I do not.
Let's talk about meals. You had certain objections with regards to the meals that were charged to the estate, is that true?
True.
December 21st, 2022, it appears as though a meal was purchased at the Grasshopper, at Frickers, at Applebee's, and at JR's,
Yes.
all on that same day. What's your objection as it pertains to those purchases?
There was no supporting receipts, and based on the credit card statements, there was 4 meals that day and no receipts to prove otherwise. And then also it looked like each amount for each restaurant were excessive for one person's meal.
Okay, so it's your, and I just want to be clear, it's your belief that a $36.97 charge at the Grasshopper is an excessive charge for one person's meal?
Correct.
April 7th of 2022, it appears as though there was a charge for $99.85 at Chop Burger here in town. What is your issue with that charge?
That is because the $99.85 is excessive for one person's meal. And I believe another person went to the dinner, so I think their meal was also included.
And does that hold true for your objection to the August 18th, 2022 Palm Palace charge?
Yes, it's excessive for one person's meal, and another person, his wife at the time, was there and I think went to the dinner.
Okay, well, you just said 2 different things.
Okay.
Let me ask you this.
Okay,
You said you think she went to the dinner once she was there. Was she there? Do you know? Yes or no?
I don't know, if she was on the trip, I don't know if she was at the meal.
Okay.
But I do know that $99.85, or sorry, $82.51 would be excessive for one person nonetheless.
Is that your same objection for the July 24th, 2022 Applebee's?
Yes, and I know his wife at times on the trip.
Okay, and how about the July 25th, 2022 Buffalo Wild Wings?
Same objection, excessive for one person, and his wife at the time was at the trip.
Let me ask you this, Sally. Have you ever eaten at the Grasshopper,
Yes,
Frickers,
yes,
Applebee's,
yes,
JR's,
yes,
Chop Burger,
yes,
Palm Palace,
yes,
Buffalo Wild Wings?
yes.
So when you say you believe this is excessive for one person, is that based on your personal experience of eating meals at these restaurants?
Yeah, so what I would spend for one meal.
You also took some, let me back up. Are there any other meals that were expensed to the estate that you take objection with?
Yeah, some were not included on our supplemental, which were the May 3rd, Rickers for $51.82.
What's your objection to that?
Excessive for one person's meal and another party was on the trip. 4922 Culvers for $27.10, excessive for one person's meal. And then Jolly Pumpkin, which is in Detroit, July 26, 2022 for $44 is excessive for one person's meal and another person was on the trip. And then, okay, April 4th, Frickers for $32.83. April 5th, 2022, Buffalo Wild Wings for $27.15. April 6th, 2022, Applebee's for $52. Were for meal expenses incurred before Sunbluff was appointed temporary conservator. So I checked for that reason, and then that was it.
Okay, let me ask you this, Sally. What do you believe is a reasonable expense that your mother's estate should pay for one person's meal?
Would it be breakfast, lunch, or dinner?
Which one do you think is the most expensive?
Dinner.
Okay, then let's say dinner, and let's assume that the restaurant is here in Adrian, Michigan. What do you think is a reasonable expense?
I would say probably $23.
Okay. And what do you base that on?
Just the amount of the food and the tip.
Is that based on
My personal experience eating at the restaurants.
Okay. Retail purchases? You have some objections to some purchases have been made. Is that true?
That's true.
Okay. What, generally speaking, are your objections? Is it to the amount? Is it to, you don't know what they were for? What is your objections?
Well, there was no supporting receipts identifying what these purchases were. And some of them, like the April 5th and 6th, were before he became conservator. So, and also how did they benefit the party, the protected party?
When you reviewed our supplemental for supplemental filing.
Yeah.
We listed several that you have issue with because you don't have any supporting documentation to show how it benefited your mother.
Right.
Are there any additional ones besides those that you take issue with?
No, there aren't.
Okay. Are there any other concerns that you have not addressed with the court that you object to the accounting that was filed by your brother?
No, there aren't.
Now, Sally, one might say, obviously the court is aware, everyone here in the room is aware, that there is a past filled with litigation and accusations between you and your brother as it pertains to your mother's estate. Is that true?
That's true.
Okay. And it would be easy for one to say that these objections are somewhat, or could be viewed as your opportunity to kind of get back at your brother for the stuff that he said or did to you. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay. Is that why we're filing this? You caused this objection to be filed?
No, it is not. This is all about my mother and her estate, and I feel that expenses were spent wrongfully on her estate, and doing it for her benefit doesn't help me at all, other than I want to help my mother. It's just not right. So that's why I'm objecting in. Also, these are like dollars and cents that, are lacking supporting documentation, which is not, the way to do it.
Well, let me ask you this, Sally. It sounds like, listening to your testimony, that you have an expectation that the conservator retain receipts for expenses that are going to be billed across to the estate of your mother. Is that an expectation you have?
Yes.
Okay. Do you feel that that's a reasonable expectation?
Yes.
Why do you feel that's reasonable?
That way the expenses or deposits can be explained without having to go to court to see if they were proper and reasonable.
And again, you've covered all your objections with the court.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Judge. I have no further questions of the witness.
Cross-examination, Ms. Parks?
Yes, Your Honor. Sally, you indicated that you had fully reviewed the response to your supplemental filing provided by my office in August of this year.
Which one are you talking about?
The response to your supplemental.
No, I have not properly reviewed that. I just saw that today right before court.
So you were not aware that all of these, or you did not review the response to these objections?
I read through it, but I didn't have a chance to go through it individually. I just got it right before court and read it one time.
And you did say that you fully reviewed the supporting documentation previously provided by your brother through my office.
Yes.
You stated on the record today that there are not invoices from Charlotte Stevenson Manor going through the full accounting period. Is that correct?
From what I remember, there was only a couple, not all complete.
So it would surprise you if I just checked what was shared with your counsel, and it was the full accounting period going from May of 2022 to May of 2023.
Okay, are you saying if the invoices were there for the whole accounting period?
Would it surprise you that they were there?
I didn't see them for the whole accounting period.
Okay. For the particular objections you have regarding the hotel stays, air travel, and restaurants. Well, let's leave restaurants out. For the hotel stays, did you look up what the going rate was for a night during those time periods?
I've stayed at those hotels when somebody cut off my electricity, and I know what they are for those time periods.
Okay. And each of those hotels, you stayed at each one of them?
I've stayed at all of them one time or another.
Okay. And air travel costs. Are you familiar with the cost of air travel? Were you looking up air travel costs during the time in question?
No, but I've flown those round trips before, so I know how much I've spent.
And you did this in 2020 year when the world was just coming out of a pandemic and people were traveling more often?
I traveled before the pandemic.
Okay. And for the car rental costs, were you looking up car rental costs in April of 2022, May, June, July 2022, when the world was just coming out of a pandemic and it was difficult to find rental cars?
Some of them I objected because they're before he became conservator, but the other ones, no, I didn't look them up.
You indicated you have a background as a CPA, so you are fully aware that it is common when you're looking at a statement for an expense that occurred on one date to actually clear the account and then be posted on a different date, correct?
Correct.
So if something was coming up as perhaps 3 different hotel stays on one single date, that could have been from a whole week's period of time.
I don't know. That's why I would need the original invoice.
Well, you acknowledge that that is a possibility.
I don't know.
Your Honor, I do not have any further questions for Ms. Xavier.
Ms. Berger? Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Xavier, do you know how much all of these charges in your motion add up to be?
We have not added them all up together.
Would it surprise you that the total is $4,773.30?
So these are the ones that we talked about today and the additional ones I had.
The ones in your motion related to hotels, travel, and food.
That doesn't surprise me, but there was additional ones I talked about too.
And you understand that this action is probably costing your mom's estate more than the $4,733 you take issue with, right?
I don't know what it's costing her estate.
The cost of all the attorneys in the room, besides yours. Would that concern you?
I don't know what it is, but I know that he should not be allowed to spend more than he's allowed to spend from her estate.
Okay. And you've had to repay the estate a sum of money, is that correct?
When I had a joint account and, yeah, I've had to repay some of that money.
And how much was that?
Well, the 46,900 was one, and then there was another check. I don't remember what that was.
Do you have an estimate?
No, I don't.
And why did you have to repay that?
Because
Objections to relevance.
Would you like to respond?
I think that if she is alleging that the current conservator is misappropriating or misusing funds in the estate, then it's relevant for us to know why she had to pay money back to the estate.
I mean, I'm pretty familiar with the case. I would say also, Mr. Baker, you did kind of open the door to this by way of introducing why perhaps we might look at the motivations of your client in filing the objection. So we might as well allow that to be fully fleshed out by documenting the facts and circumstances that could otherwise potentially present the court with deciding whether or not she's brought her objections with unclean hands. So I'm going to allow the question. So if you could answer, or if you need Ms. Berger to repeat the question, that's fine.
repeat the question.
Why did you have to repay the estate?
Because when I had a joint account with my mom, I moved the money for safekeeping for my brother because it was a joint account. And as soon as the court said I had to pay that back, I immediately paid back. I did not spend the money. I just kept it for safekeeping in another account. And I was cleared of any criminal charges about that.
Okay. Okay, no further questions, thank you.
All right, Ms. Dumont?
Mrs. Xavier, you testified that your mother lived with you before she went into Charlotte Stevenson.
Correct.
Do you know the month and or year that she went in?
Yeah, she went in on April 7th of 2022.
Okay. And when is the last time that you've seen Anna Xavier?
I saw her in June of this year.
Okay. And how was that visit?
It was okay, except she kind of had a meltdown about some of her food that came and got upset.
Okay. And you haven't seen her, spoken to her since?
Right.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
None, Your Honor, thank you.
Recross, Ms. Parks? I'm sorry, I didn't catch your answer.
Sorry,
you're
I
muted.
forgot I muted. No, Your Honor.
Ms. Berger?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, thank you for your testimony. You may return to your seat. Other witnesses today, Mr. Baker?
None, Your Honor, thank you.
Ms. Parks?
Yes, Your Honor, I would like to call Sam Xavier to the stand.
Sure. Right to the aims.
Please raise your right hand. You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Sam, could you state your first name and your last, please?
My name is Sambath Xavier, Sumbath Xavier.
And you prefer to be called Sam?
You can call me either one.
It is correct that you were appointed temporary guardian and conservator for your mother on April 7th, 2022, correct?
That's correct.
And it is also correct that you live in California, right?
That's correct.
When you filed this petition for guardianship and conservatorship, were you still in California or were you in Michigan?
I was in the state of Michigan and I filed it on April 1st at Lenawee County Probate Court.
And when did you arrive in the state of Michigan?
On March 31st.
And what led you to visit your mother at that time?
I got a call from Adult Protective Services. I was not able to contact my mother for over 6 years. Sally had not allowed us to have any contact with our mother. And I had periodic welfare checks by the local police department. And the only number they had on file was my number. And they called me and they said that Sally dropped Ann off at respite care at Hospice of Lenawee. She's 60 pounds. And if somebody doesn't get out here soon, your mom's not going to survive. So I flew out there and I was told to go to the courts to file a guardianship and conservatorship to take over for the well-being of my mother.
Judge, I just like no objection for the record. That's all hearsay.
Would you like to respond, Ms. Parks?
It was a question as to why he came out, what triggered him to actually come out, the fact that he was concerned about his mother. That's what I was getting to.
So it's not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted?
Correct.
Very good. All right, duly noted, and will be considered under that same standard, Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Judge.
Go on to the next question, Ms. Parks.
And Sam, you said that you filed on April 1st for guardianship and conservatorship.
Correct.
And during that time, where were you staying from the time of filing on April 1st?
I was staying at the Carlton Lodge in Adrian, Michigan.
And to clarify and make sure that it's clear, came to the state and you filed these petitions for guardianship and conservatorship because you were concerned about the welfare of your mother.
Correct.
And these petitions were in fact granted by this court.
At that point, it was a temporary hearing on May 29th of that year, and I went on April 4th, Monday, after we found out that Sally was no longer at the home for 5 hours on Saturday, and that nobody had changed her depends. So I went and filed for an emergency temporary guardianship hearing on April 4th, and it was on April 7th is when we had the hearing.
And she moved to Charlotte Stevenson on the same day?
No, she moved to Hospice of Lenawee on the same day. And at that point, on April 15th, when I found a permanent place to send my mom, I moved her to Charlotte Stevenson from Hospice of Lenawee.
And when you became the guardian and conservator of your mother, what kind of accounts did she have? Where did she have accounts?
I had no access to any of the accounts. All the bank statements and all the bills were sent to the 2500 Sand Creek Highway House, and I had to contact each financial institution, and I was actually denied access because Sally was on the account. And that's when we had to file an ex parte motion.
Okay. Let's start to getting into the specific objections. Did Ann Xavier receive Social Security income between May 3rd, 2022 to May 3rd, 2023?
Yes, she did.
Where was that income deposited?
Well, the initial checks were going to the 2500 Sand Creek Highway. I contacted the Social Security Administration and had them pointed to me, and then they were received at my home address in Redondo Beach, California, and I deposited those in the Conservator bank account.
So these were physical checks that were received?
Correct.
Were copies of those physical checks given to my office to provide to the interested parties?
Yes.
Okay. And as far as you are aware, were those checks provided to those interested parties?
As far as I know, correct.
Okay. Do you receive a monthly statement from the Social Security Administration?
No, I don't.
Did you provide any supporting documentation reflecting that income from Social Security Administration?
Yes, I did. I went to my local Social Security Administration office, and they printed out a ledger of all the deposits and all the checks that were made over that accounting period.
And that was provided to my office to then provide to the interested parties, correct?
Correct.
And month to month, does the income from Social Security change?
It does change, but it's more on an annual basis. We get notice toward the end of each calendar year, and she has got an increase in her monthly benefits with the cost of inflation.
And other than the printed checks that you said were initially sent to the Sand Creek Highway address, did you receive any other physical checks or were they automatically deposited?
No other physical checks from Social Security.
Regarding the Medicare Plus Blue PPO, do you pay for Medicare Plus Blue PPO for your mother?
Yes, that was an ongoing expense, and my sister is well aware of that because the bills were coming to the 2500 St. Creek Highway house, and they were being paid up till the time I took over on May 4th.
Did you receive an invoice for this health insurance in May 2022 or December 2022?
December 2022, yes. The May 2022, it was sent to the 2500 St. Creek Highway address, and I had to contact them to start sending me the monthly bills for the Medicare healthcare insurance.
So was there a payment made in May 2022?
I believe so.
Would it surprise you if I told you based on the records that it was not?
Well, at that point, we were in transition in May of 2022, and all I know is when I got the bills, I paid whatever was back owed.
How did you obtain the invoices for the Blue Cross or the Medicare Blue Plus PPO?
They were mailed to me in the address.
And were those shared with your counsel to share with the interested parties?
Yes, they were.
And as far as you are aware, that was done.
That's correct.
Regarding the City National Bank, do you recall when you opened the Conservator account at the City National Bank?
Yes, it was when I had all the money that was extorted from my mom's personal bank accounts in hand, and I went to the bank that I had to open up the account. It was toward the end of May, I believe it was around May 26th of 2022.
And as you said before, prior to that, Anne had accounts in Adrian that were jointly held by herself and by Sally?
Yes, at both Lenco Credit Union as well as Premier Bank.
And so Sally had access to those account statements already?
Correct.
And you would not have had any statements with the conservatorship account until the end of May 2022?
That's correct. Matter of fact, I went to Premier Bank on April 7th, right after the appointment, and I was denied access because Sally was on the account.
Yeah. Do you recall what funds were used to open the account at City National Bank?
Those were the funds that were returned from Sally Xavier.
Can you be more specific? Because Sally does reference a deposit. I'm pulling this up now. Referenced a deposit of $46,055.92. Would it be correct to say that that was a deposit for a Lenco reimbursement and the Social Security Administration?
Correct.
And that Lenco reimbursement was $46,000. I apologize. It was the Lenco that's $46,055.92 that was liquidated from Lenco.
Correct.
And on the same date that that Lenco check was deposited, there was also a deposit for $46,900 from the TLC liquidation.
That's correct.
On June 24th, there was a deposit of $5,810.13. Can you tell us what the source of that income was?
Not offhand, but I assume that was probably Social Security. That was actually, I had not received payments, but by the time I was finally getting the checks, they probably added up a couple months or 2 or 3 months of Social Security that I had to go deposit into Anne's Conservator account.
Okay. Okay, there was testimony given regarding a deposit of $27.09 in December of 2022. Was that based on records, was that a refund from an overpayment or from State Farm?
Well, I believe the overpayment from State Farm was the $75 that was referenced on the homeowner's insurance after the bank foreclosed on the home because of Sally, but nevertheless, that was a refund from the homeowner's insurance. The $27 was probably some other refund from a local service that was being provided to my mom when she lived at 2500 St. Creek Highway in Adrian.
Okay. Were copies of all of the checks given to Sally to review?
Yes, they were. I went to both City National Bank to get 2022 as well as 2023, and all copies of all checks were provided, and it cost $6 to get copies of each individual checks, which depleted funds from my mom's estate.
Yeah. And copies of all bank statements were provided.
That's correct.
And based on your familiarity with the bank statements, it is shown on those statements when TIAA craft is an automatic deposit.
Correct. I've never received a physical check from TIAA. It's always been a direct deposit straight into the conservator bank account.
Yeah. And you also provided copies of the statements from TIAA craft. Is that correct?
That's correct.
For Charlotte Stevenson Manor, how were you notified that the monthly cost was going to be increasing?
I get a letter every year. Matter of fact, I just got a letter, which I'll scan to your office, that indicates what the increase is. And for this year, it's going to be 15%. And it's going to be a total of $8,440 a month, which we have very limited resources. We're now in a $3,500 a month deficit.
And did you also obtain invoices for each month between May 2022 and May 2023?
That's correct. As soon as I got the invoice, I paid it right away. It's due on the 1st of every month.
And were those invoices provided to your counsel to provide to interested parties?
They sure were. Absolutely.
As far as you are aware, was that done?
Yes.
Are you aware that as Anne's conservator, you are entitled to fiduciary fees for your work done as conservator?
Yes, I am.
Do you charge the estate fiduciary fees?
No, I don't.
And why is that?
Because my mother has very little resources. When I took over as temporary guardian and conservator on April 7th, I was pretty shocked to see that Sally, number one, had went to the bank and took all the money out. And then secondly, the little amount of money that was left based on the income she had over a 10-year time period. We should have had at least 4x the amount of money that was in that account. So I chose not to incur any additional fees to my mom's estate to conserve as much money as I possibly can for her well-being.
From the accounting, it appears that you do not have any travel or hotel expenses or food restaurant expenses after December 2022.
That's correct. I made a decision that I can no longer afford to charge the estate for my travel, and I'm paying those expenses on my own personal income. And I'm not charging the estate. Matter of fact, for the second year accounting period, I have no expenses for any travel, food, or car rent.
So just to confirm, you are continuing to visit Anne Xavier and you are
That's
continuing
correct.
to incur expenses.
Yep, I was incurred expenses last month when I went to visit her in August.
Regarding the specific complaints regarding air travel, did you fly first class?
Absolutely not. Spirit Airlines, the cheapest airline I could find.
Okay. And did you get any upgrades during that time?
None.
For the hotel stays, did you ever rent more than one hotel on the same day?
Never. Absolutely not.
There was discussion regarding multiple hotel stays being charged in April, which was when you first went to Michigan, correct?
Correct.
Can you tell us where you stayed during that time period?
Yes. Unfortunately, because Sally was occupying the family home, I could not stay there. I stayed at the Carlton Lodge. That was from March 31st to, I believe, I checked out on April 2nd. I stayed at the Wyndham Hotel in Sylvania, Ohio on Saturday, the 2nd. And then I stayed at the Comfort Inn on April 5th, April 3rd. And I stayed there all the way through when I left on April 10th.
And rental car expenses, can you tell us what the rental car market looked like during the times that you had to visit your mother?
It was very tight and it was very expensive. Matter of fact, I had to go back to Detroit Metro Airport twice to get a return on my car to get a lower rate on a different car. So it was an inconvenience to save money. Instead of keeping the existing car, I went back to get a lower rate on another car.
And so you were actively seeking out lower rates when available for these vehicles?
Exactly. And also, I wasn't anticipating that I was even going to be in Adrian that long until I found out that I need to stay till April 7th for the temporary guardianship and conservatorship hearing. And that's why my rental car was up. And if I kept it, it would have been more money to keep the existing car. So I went back, made a new reservation, and got a less expensive rental car so I could fulfill coming to court on April 7th to petition to be temporary guardian and conservator.
For the identified retail purchases, let's go through those one by one if you would not mind. There's a purchase December 21st at Walgreens for $48.20. Do you recall what that was for?
Yes, that was for getting photos, family photos for Ann's room at Charlotte Stevenson, so she would have more familiarity with her family.
And then April 5th, 2022, Walgreens for $76.80.
That was for office supplies so that I could prepare for the temporary guardianship and conservator hearing on April 7th.
Is that also true for April 6th, 2022?
Correct.
What about December 21st, 2022, Marshalls for $143.04?
Okay, so Ann always likes to give back to people that care for her. So we had went to Marshalls and we had bought the staff as well as the nurses at Charlotte Stevenson holiday gifts on behalf of Ann.
December 22nd, 2022, CVS Pharmacy for $205.29.
How much was that?
$205.29.
That one is probably going to be for just basic that she needed some health and beauty aids that the Charlotte Stevenson asked me to go provide, such as lotion, hand cream, other miscellaneous personal hygiene items. So I went and provided those and went to CVS and got those per the nurse's request at Charlotte Stevenson.
What about May 4th, 2022? There's a purchase at Walmart for $174.50 and Meijer for $184.18.
Okay. The purchases at Walmart, that was for a television for Ann's room. Ann didn't have a TV, so we went and bought her a flat screen TV. And then the expenses at Meijer's was for clothing. Ann didn't have any clothing that fit her, so we had to go buy her a little bit larger clothes because at that point she had put on weight from the time she was admitted at Charlotte Stevenson to that time in May when I came to be the permanent guardian and conservator. So that was for clothes.
And then the last one, July 24th, 2022, Meijer for $66.83.
That's more clothes for Ann.
Okay. Regarding the restaurant purchases, we had discussed those, and I believe what we had discussed was that perhaps they were excessive. Is that accurate?
Yes, in some instances, I had my spouse traveling with me, and I also had Sally's daughter with me on one night for dinner. So at that point, I agreed that I should only charge the estate for my own personal expenses, and I have agreed to reimburse the estate.
And have you cut a check to the estate for 50% of those expenses?
Yes, I had. I cut a check yesterday for $252.17, and I deposited it into Ann's Conservator bank account at City National Bank, and I went ahead and emailed you the receipt as well as copies of the check.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination, Mr. Baker.
Briefly, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir. With regards to these expenses, and I'm referring to the miscellaneous expenses you testified were for things like television, clothing, health and beauty aids. Do you have any receipts reflecting what was purchased and when it was purchased?
I'd have to look for those.
So as we sit here today, those have not been provided. Is that an accurate statement?
Some of them have, some of them may not have been.
Which ones have?
I'd have to go through my file and discuss with my attorney which ones that are in question, and I'd have to see if I still have copies of those.
Do you retain receipts, generally speaking, when you plan on expensing things to the estate?
Yes, I do.
So you have receipts for all the hotel stays?
I have whatever they were charged on my credit card that I provided my attorney.
Well, okay, let me be clear. I'm not asking it if it's reflected on your credit card statements. I'm asking, do you have the actual receipt the hotel gives you when you check out?
Sometimes the hotel says it's going to be charged. You book through Expedia or Orbitz, you'll be getting your receipt through them. They don't provide me an actual receipt at the time of checkout.
Well, that's fair. But when you get those receipts through Expedia or directly on your email, do you retain those?
There is no receipt, sir. It's an expense on my American Express card. That's it.
So your testimony is you do not receive a receipt at all times when you stay at a hotel?
Correct.
Okay. Do you receive a receipt when you eat dinner and plan on expensing that to the estate?
Yes, I do. And I provided those receipts.
So you've retained all your receipts reflecting the meals?
Yes, I have those.
And you acknowledge that you actually expense the estate for half of meals or for meals that were for people other than yourself in their travels here.
I did that yesterday, sir.
Okay. So when you filed the information in your annual accounting, it wasn't completely accurate. Is that correct?
I didn't believe that they would be questioned based on my goal there was to get my mom into a facility that was safe where she could continue her life.
But again, I'll ask you, when you filed your annual accounting with regards to some of these expenses, it was not correct. Is that true?
No, I'm not going to answer your question, sir. Whatever I filed was 100% honest, and that's what was filed. I don't extort money from my mom's estate, if that's what you're asking.
No, I'm asking you if the document you filed with the court that purported to be the first annual accounting accurately reflect all the expenses that you had assessed to the estate.
Yes, correct.
And you now acknowledge that some of those expenses should not have been included in that annual accounting. Is that a true
That's
statement?
specifically toward the meals that were other people were accompanying me, and I've reimbursed the estate, sir.
With regards to your airline travel, were all the airline tickets purchased solely for you?
Correct.
Okay, so you never purchased a ticket for your former spouse?
I don't know who you're talking about, a former spouse. I'm still married, for the record.
Okay, for your spouse, forgive me.
Yes, but I did not charge any airfare for her to travel with me. I only charge my own personal airfare.
Now, you indicated that you provided several sources of documents to your attorney who then forwarded them to the other attorneys in this case. And I'm not disputing that. My question to you, sir, is did you provide all those documents prior to filing the annual accounting with the court?
I provided what was asked for at the time it was asked for.
Okay, when was it asked for?
It was asked for, I filed it, and my attorney asked me, we need receipts for these different items. please provide them that these are the objections that your sister has, and we need to have documentation to support it. So I have provided all of those. Again, this is my first time being a guardian in conservatorship. It's very difficult to handle these expenses, especially small little miscellaneous, expenses, and have to be accounted for every single thing that I did. I provided all the receipts that were required, and it may not have been provided when the initial accounting was provided because I didn't know I needed to provide it at the actual documentation. Nobody told me.
On August 24th of 2023, you signed a document which was entitled a petition to allow accounts. Is that a true statement?
Correct.
Okay. To the best of your recollection, did you provide all these documents to your attorney so they could be included with your petition with the probate court prior to signing that document on August 24th of 2023?
I provided all the documentation that was required so that we could actually file it with the courts.
Is that a yes or no, sir?
That's a yes.
Okay. Yet you just stated that when your attorney told you your sister had certain objections to that petition and asked you to get additional documentation, you collected that documentation and sent it to your attorney. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay.
I
Does
didn't know that she was going to be objecting to every single expense in the hotel car rental. I didn't think she would be going that. Those are legitimate expenses to travel to take care and visit my mother.
Judge, there's not a question for the witness. He's answered my question.
Most of what he responded was kind of, frankly, Mr. Xavier, some of your answers are coming out too quickly for me to even understand on the record, and it's going to be hard to transcribe this. So if you could slow down a little bit, please, and
Okay.
of course, be responsive to Mr. Baker's questions.
Okay.
You're concerned about the balance in your mother's estate. Is that true?
That's correct.
In fact, are you concerned that you may run out of money in the next year or so?
I'm very concerned.
Okay. Then why did you spend money on the staff at Charlotte Stevenson?
Because that was my mother's wish.
Well, do you think your mother's wish is to remain there as long as she possibly can?
Yes, that is her wish.
Okay. So and I understand it's to many people, it's an insignificant amount of money, but to spend that money on gifts for these folks, that could enhance or speed up her departure from Charlotte Stevenson, could it not?
I don't understand your question.
Well, you spent how much money on unrelated people who are caregivers for your mother?
Yes, that was per my mother. That was her wish.
How much money did you spend?
Very little, minimal. Went to Marshall's.
I believe it was $143 and some cents. Is that true?
That was for 5 staff members and nurses.
Okay, that's fine. My question is, couldn't that $143 and some odd cents have been better served to preserve your mother's estate?
Yeah, just like all the legal fees that Sally has ran up to defend my mother's estate. Correct. Yeah.
Judge, I have no further questions.
Ms. Berger?
I have no questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Dumont?
Your Honor, I have no questions, thank you.
Okay, any redirect, Ms. Parks?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you for your testimony, Mr. Xavier. Anyone
Thank
else
you.
you'd like us to hear from? Ms. Parks?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Ms. Berger?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Dumont?
No, Your Honor, and I apologize. I have a 3 o'clock in district court that'll take me about 10 minutes. If I could break for that, and then I'll run up as soon as I'm done.
I think that's reasonable. Any objection?
No objection.
Take a brief recess to allow for that. Very good.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, we're back on record. It's been a bit longer than anticipated. We've got a sidebar. The attorneys have had an opportunity to talk with their clients as well. We've got Ms. Dumont back, and here we are. So we've got all of our same parties and attorneys. Anything to say for the record before we get into closing arguments, counselors?
Judge, I think we might have a stipulation, if I can place the terms of that on the record. Judge, I think we have an agreement that the conservator would reimburse the estate for any expenses that were incurred prior to his temporary appointment, which I believe was on April 7th of 2022. The only exception to that would be any legal fees that were incurred on behalf of conservatorship and the guardian in preparing the petitions for the temporary emergency and ultimately the final appointment as a conservator. Additionally, he is going to attempt to locate and provide copies of receipts for expenses incurred during this time, specifically like airline tickets, hotels. That requirement does not include meals. And the reason it doesn't include meals is we've all agreed that because he reimbursed the estate for half of the meal expenses yesterday, apparently, I think that satisfies the meal requirement. So he will provide those receipts. It's my understanding that the court would take final ruling on those objections under advisement pending receipt of the receipts. The court will review them and make a final decision on what, if anything, should be reimbursed to the estate. With those two caveats, I guess I want to place one other thing on the record. Your Honor, Mr. Parks clarified for myself and my client that although there was billings on the attorney fees that were listed after the closing period of this first accounting, they were not added as expenses to this annual account. As I've explained to my client, whether they end up on this, the first accounting that we're here for you on today, or the second accounting, which is going to come in, I think, here in the near future, regardless, those are generally warranted, they're reimbursable expenses. So I think it's kind of a form over substance argument as to which accounting they go on. My client knows that she will check and ascertain when the second accounting comes to make sure they're not hitting both accountings. But we, as I stated in our supplemental brief, we have no objections at this time to the attorney fees. And with that, I think that is the agreement that we've all reached.
All right. Well, perhaps most importantly, Ms. Parks, is your client on board with this?
Yes, Your Honor.
Very good. To our guardian ad litem and our court-appointed attorney?
Yes, Your Honor, I believe that is what we agreed on.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Did you want to take any testimony from your clients?
If I can just water my client briefly.
You are. All right. Yes, Ms. Xavier, you remain under oath.
Is that a yes? You understand?
Yes.
Okay. Sally, you understand the terms that we just placed on the record?
Yes,
And you're agreeable with those terms?
yes, but when would the receipts be due?
That's up to the court's discretion.
Okay,
Okay, but you're agreeable with those terms?
yes,
Okay, and you understand that that settles all of our objections?
yes,
Okay, you have a right for me to continue arguing this case. The judge is going to make a final decision, but you'd rather settle it with that stipulation. Do you agree with that?
yes.
Okay, I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. I would look for those receipts within the next 30 days, which is what I typically do in order to allow someone to provide receipts. I'll typically give you like a 30-day adjournment for that anyway, if that's, we're getting nods of affirmation.
Yes.
Ms. Parks, any questions? Or does any of our other attorneys have questions for Ms. Sally Xavier?
No, Your Honor.
No.
No, Your Honor.
Very good. Ms. Parks, would you like to hear from your client?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Sunbath Xavier, or Sam, you also remain under oath. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Xavier, do you understand the agreement as stated by Mr. Baker?
Yes, I do.
And do you agree to those terms?
Yes, I do. I know that's the law, but I had to get there somehow to file this temporary petition. I did not have legal counsel, so there's no expense to the estate for that. And I agree to pay what my travel expenses were prior to April 7th.
And you understand that you have 30 days to provide receipts to the court regarding expenses incurred such as hotel fees, airfare after your appointment, correct?
Correct.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Any other questions for Mr. Xavier?
No, Your Honor.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Very good, thank you. I do think that those travel expenses, I'm looking forward to reviewing those to determine whether or not they conform with what's expected both locally and at large in our case law with reasonable compensation for our conservators. But I also want to say I appreciate that the funding for those expenditures was in a much better position at that point than it is now. I hear you, Mr. Xavier. And I want to say that I do appreciate that you're not asking for reimbursement for those moving forward, given the circumstances of your mother's care and the, seems rather large increase for that care that's happening. So I want to say I do appreciate that, and I'm sure Sally does as well, frankly. So thank you for your services as conservator and for looking out for your mom and making sure that all that's continuing to be available for her. And I will carefully look at any receipts that you provide for me. But I appreciate also your acknowledgement of my obligations to look at those expenses in accordance with what I have to look at under the law and with our cases.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Who would like to prepare the order?
I think the guardian ad litem will, Judge. I'll prepare.
All right, Mr. Baker, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Unless there's any questions, that's all for tonight.
Thank you.
Your Honor.
What really got me is when that one attorney said the total of all of these extra costs is like $4,000 and something. I don't remember the exact number, but 4,000 plus. She thinks nothing of having all those attorneys that are going to be charged to the mother's estate, the money that's in the pot, the mom has for her care. She thinks nothing of spending that money frivolously on a court hearing when she could have sat down with her brother and said, let's go over these charges, because I'm not quite understanding. Let's go over this. Let's sit down together and go over it. She couldn't do that. Instead, she wanted this big court case that she wanted to bring him into court and have him answer for all these charges that she just assumes. She doesn't actually go and find out how much a room at this hotel costs, because since 2020, hotels are astronomical. Car rentals, astronomical. Gas, astronomical. You know, everything. Food has gone up at least 50%. So a restaurant where you used to be able to get a meal for $20, it's now $35 or more. So for her to come into court, bring her brother into court to answer all these charges, when she could have just called him up and said, hey, you know, let's sit down and go over these. It would have been so much easier. Or do you have receipts for this, this, and this? Because I'm not being able to find them. Instead, she wants to charge her mother's estate for all this money. And it was interesting when she was told that she had to pay back $43,000 that she took out of her mother's account. That's interesting. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.